The St. Louis Chess Club offers one 5 round weekend tournament every month, in addition to several quality lectures throughout the week, some of which are led by the Grandmaster in residence. Once we're done learning, we have the chance to test out our new ideas in a live over the board game at the St. Louis Chess Club's weekly nights tournament. If we're extremely lucky and there happens to be a professional event taking place, we can even meet, watch, and get autographs from some of the strongest grandmasters in the world. Of course, I'm not able to attend every single event every month, but I do always participate in the weekly nights because the weekly nights gives me a chance to play more aggressive lines. Maybe play around with an opening I'm not super comfortable with yet, and not worry so much about the result. I also rarely miss this 5 round weekend tournament, which I'm going to use as a more serious event where I am trying to score as well as I possibly can. Quick story about how I got into, I guess this is getting to be competitive chess. Got into online chess during COVID lockdown. I also moved back to my hometown of Springfield, Missouri during COVID lockdown. When I realized St. Louis is the chess capital of America, I thought, well, we were just locked inside. Life is short. I was already familiar with the St. Louis area and loved it because me and my parents made the about 3.5 hour road trip up to many St. Louis Cardinals, St. Louis Rams, uh, and St. Louis Blues hockey games while I was growing up. Like, well, that's a perfect opportunity and excuse for me to play as much chess as possible. Let's do it. I'm going to be showing you my games from last month's 5 round weekend tournament. I waited intentionally. Um, my first round of this month's tournament is in about 12 hours. I waited so by explaining and creating a video about my performance, it would also force me to have my mistakes fresh in my head so I don't make them again. I hope you have a lot of fun and learn something from my chess games. First round, I did play in the under 1800 section last month. This month, I will be playing in the open, mainly because a lot of 1600s and 1700s play up. So even if I don't play my best, I will still be competing with people slightly stronger than me. And that's what I need. This was a new player, and he's going to get a lot stronger just learning. I won't spend too much time on this one. I played as black. And from here, just because I'm not too far removed from the beginner days myself, you could say I pre-moved it, like that viral clip of Hikaru Nakamura forgetting he was playing over the board and he was reaching for his mouse. In my head, I actually kind of laughed when I saw this opponent bring his queen out so early. I'm like, okay, here's what he's going to do because I've been there, done that several times, and I've had to learn. Um, and what's going to happen, as you'll see, is I will be able to trap the white queen without too much trouble. Yeah. And I don't know that I made the best moves, probably, but again, I knew what he was going to do because I've seen it too many times. Yeah. And notice for beginners, which this will happen frequently, or similar things will happen frequently in your games. My bishop is protected by my knight. So if this queen tries to go anywhere, I have it covered. And from there, of course, it's not going to be too challenging because of a big material advantage. Still, not a bad idea when we're starting out to fight till the end and try to prolong it as long as possible. If nothing else, if the games go longer, that lets us see more positions so we can learn. Round two. Now, this is my best over the board win so far. 1677, and he's been performing well lately. I think I was his only loss, actually, which is frustrating because I could have won this tournament, but it was all my fault. I had the white pieces, and the stars kind of aligned for me. I played my two most difficult opponents with the white pieces, and both of them, it would be reasonable to say, had opportunities to survive with a draw. I didn't see it. Most at this level would not see it. But still, I caught my breaks and only had a decent tournament. It could have been a great tournament. I'm not a morning person. And you'll notice, I think it's so deep it's not giving the icons. Yeah, I was doing my uh, serious second review and I had the engine on the deepest. I'm not a morning person. So my first round of the day, I kind of have to be woken up. I have to have a reason to fight. Like in this, you'll see I'm oversimplifying. And then I realize, like, whoa, well, this is just stupid. I am just giving away my advantage. And then I kind of wake up towards the end and fight. But it is a good learning point because in the intermediate ranks, we really need to make sure we're focused on crucial moments because there are such drastic swings in the game and inaccuracies or even mistakes made by both players that we just have to be ready for it. And being ready to capitalize on mistakes is almost as important as finding great ideas ourselves. That's what I wanted. Okay, like you'll see, my first kind of wake up Dayton moment right there. So I'm just giving the pawn away, which is, of course, a terrible idea. And as soon as I made the move, I knew what I did. Fortunately, he didn't punish me for it. Other than that, this is a decent game by me and a pretty typical one in terms of the mistakes I made. And the good thing is they're not hard to correct. Like, for example, I mean, that move doesn't do much. That's not a great move. Now, at my level, again, I'm at least giving my bishop options to get out. But the knight move doesn't do much for me. B4 would have been better. And where it gets interesting, of course, this move isn't fabulous because why would I want to do that? I mean, the rook taking would have been better. General principles are meant to be broken if we have a good reason in chess, and at my level, that's tough because he was just thinking, I don't want these doubled pawns, but these doubled pawns are not bad at all, especially with the queens off the board. And I actually, again, I hate mornings, and I totally just didn't even have a plan. I was like, let's get the queens off the board. I'm waking up, save some energy for round three. I've got the white pieces. I should have chances as long as I don't mess up. But that's not how we want to play. That's not how we get better. So, and here, that's a fine move. I would probably a little bit more flexible to even bring the bishop back to e3. Would have given me some options, a little more flexibility, but totally fine. And now here, that was not. That's where when he made this move, that is not something you want to commit. You don't want to commit a pawn there that early. I wasn't able to really punish it, but it doesn't look pretty, and it wasn't pretty. And you'll see, I do have a space advantage, though it's not clear how I could turn it into something tangible. But you can see black's pieces are backed up and mine have some wiggle room. But you see that a6 is going to stop a lot. And I looked at just briefly, if I bring my bishop in, I'm not going to give him a bishop pair just to keep my pieces in his territory. So I really have no options here but to back away. Now it was important more for beginners or lower level intermediate players. That was an important move, which is fairly obvious, but he had to think for a second. When I say a second, I mean more than the average move. I don't know, maybe a couple minutes. But clearly that's all he could do in that instance. Because if he doesn't do something, the rook will be gone, of course. And let's say, oh, I don't know, the rook goes here. So now I'm going to be again piling pressure on this knight. Oh, that's not right. Knight e4. And can you survive that and not lose your rook? So bishop a3, rook c8. It begins getting a little bit difficult to prevent my two attackers from winning a piece. So that knight move was important, but not that difficult to find. One weakness I'm working on. Well, back up. First of all, these bishops are very good. And the extent of my thought process with that knight move, which was not a good move, was if he wants my bishop, I won't have to double pawns or have any problems taking back. But that knight is going to be a real pain in my neck. As you'll see, I'm going to probably lose the bishop anyway. It would have been best just take the knight. And really what I'd love to do is get my rook to the seventh, which is always a good idea. But especially with those bishops, I could have played that much better. Another learning point here. This game was full of situations that weren't complicated or scary, but at my level, they don't always get spotted. Like, for example, have to be slightly careful with G3, which the computer likes. I would say for humans, it's not as comfortable. Pushing pawns around your king is always um, something we should think about. But I was seeing, what was I saying? Whatever it was, I would have to recognize this pin. Yeah, so this is an example of a common mistake at the intermediate level. Walking into a situation like this, the king feels a little bit better now that the pawns are pushed. It gives us a little room, but that bishop has an absolute pin on our g3 pawn, which would allow the knight to take because our pawn cannot recapture. I'm looking at these things and realizing it's going to be an end game I'm comfortable with, which is mainly the queens are off the board, plenty of time. And though the opponent is likely better because of the bishop pair, there's not a lot of ways I can be just surprised or walk into a checkmate that wasn't easy to see coming. Now, the end game is the biggest difference, in my opinion, from this level and what I will see in the 17 and 1800 level. A lot of inconsistency in this end game by both. And even when I made this move, which it was the best move, I thought I was winning by, I mean, a fair amount. I didn't think it was super clear, but I'm like, I'm fine. And I did calculate everything accurately. Like that forward, that's not super easy. And I wouldn't have made that a year ago. But I counted. I would have time to get back and control the promotion square, which I did. Still, the king can do enough to my pawns for black to hold a draw. Because if I try to advance, I mean, obviously, I can't lose my bishop. So I go, what's it wanting me to do? Bishop b8, anything, anything. That king is just going to keep coming back. I can bring my king in. I'll lose this pawn. And now I have no way to do any damage, right? Or I won't lose this pawn, sorry, but I cannot advance these pawns. What I did see is what happened because most intermediates to advanced, we um, make similar oversights. And I saw my bishop would control everything. Including the promotion square. Put it another way, black's pawns are on light squares opposite his bishop, while mine are on the same, so I can protect. And that's what happened. Could have gone either way, but happy to get the win. Round three. This is my 5 p.m. game on that Saturday, which would have been, I believe, July 13th. I had the black pieces, and this is painful. 1600 level player. He didn't play his best. I had a huge advantage. I overestimated. I just thought it was over. I'm like, there's no way that he has any prayer. But A takeaway will be material advantages are obviously advantages, but there are very different types of material advantages depending on the pieces, how they can coordinate, the pawn structure. And just because we have even a +2 or 3 material lead does not mean we should get comfortable. And as you'll see, if we do start to slip and mess up an advantage, we have to accept our draw and not get emotional, which I did this. Because this would have put me 3-0, and all I'd have to do is score one of two the next day to win first. Played a strong middle game here, which is probably the best part of my chess. I would say I'm slightly above most athletes at my level when it comes to tactics and capitalizing on mistakes. And see, and that's why it's important to really focus on crucial moments. I, for instance, have a very unique approach to time management right now. In these longer time controls, 90 minutes, I allow myself 5 long thinks, which I classify long thinks as greater than 10 minutes. I say, Dayton, this is something that's important. You have 10 minutes. And that might seem silly because, okay, 90 minutes, if you think for 10 minutes on 5 moves and you make 60 moves in the game, you got to rush the others. Not really, because there's many moves that it's very clear, or there are only 2 options that are even sane. So that has helped me a lot not do what this opponent did, which is make a kind of rush move and not look deeper into the position. That allowed me to have a huge advantage. Though white got off to a good start, as we should expect, it's important to remember, I mean, maybe even draw a line in the middle of the board. Once pieces start crossing into the other player's territory, you got to make sure they have something to do where they're controlling something, or that's why outpost squares are so great. Because if they're not, like that knight, yeah, it's in my position, sure, yeah, my rook is trapped, but I'm substantially better for many reasons, but especially rooks aren't connected. That bishop cannot get out. And that knight is just pretty much alone. And also, there's no way for it to get free after it captures my rook, which is why I'm sure the opponent anticipated I would take the knight because obviously rook is more valuable than the knight. Okay, I lost my rook. I have to at least get something back, but I'm going to let it sit there and do as much damage as I can. I actually made the right move, which I wasn't sure over the board. Bring my rook in to help clean up uh, all the material I can before returning to threaten the knight. And this is painful. This is absolutely painful because, again, my advantage, I'm like, okay, there's not that much material on the board. Sure, the pawns are good, but surely I am just completely winning, and there's nothing that can happen to stop it. But once the rook gets to the seventh, it can really change everything. Even though I got complacent, had I stayed calm, I still would have had a winning endgame. That would have required more focus than it should have. But instead, as you'll see, after I made that, that's just an ignorant move. I declined the draw. We were both kind of flustered at this point. He clearly was planning on losing. I was planning on winning. And now we're both just wondering what the heck happened. And he gave me chances to salvage the draw again after offering a repeat of moves. And I didn't take it. Terrible. Terrible. And now what could have been a really, really incredible start to the tournament is just good. This is the fourth round, first game of the final day, Sunday. This guy, his rating's climbing quickly. He plays super solid. I think he's getting back into chess, takes his draws, knows what he's doing in the openings, and just doesn't mess up. And I knew he was going to play for a draw unless things went his way. And that's frustrating to me because a lot of my advantages come off enemy mistakes, which is typical of intermediate players. And my strategy going in was to make at least one, kind of aggressive move in the open, but not try to do too much, and then really restrict his pieces. And I felt like if I could restrict his pieces, he would have to really fight for a win or to try to attack. I wasn't just going to let him have a situation where his minor pieces could get out, roam, block what I was trying to do. I'm not taking a quick draw. I want to get better and force him to defend, counterattack, and have a decisive result. And this was a nice win and a good opening by me here. Okay. Okay. And once I had this, I figured I was going to let that pawn just sit there for eternity until he either shows me he has an idea, some way to plan around that pawn or make it go away, or even better, gives me something of value to make his bishop better. And now I'm just thinking, like I said, don't let that pawn move, don't let that bishop become strong, and my bishop will be better. And I figured that would, to a large extent, be the difference in this game. As I mentioned, he's a smart player, conservative player, but smart player. And I was looking, this is where I mentioned I'm playing to win these games. There's been a few cases you might have seen, I wasn't checking, where a C pawn push might have been good. Pushing some of these king pawns might be good. The center's fairly locked up. Pieces are over here. Let's get these pawns going, get some space. Wasn't sure. I wasn't familiar. I wasn't comfortable. So I did not do that. And I only made one, what I would consider bad decision in this game, which fortunately he did not see. That was it. That was it. And simply because after queen h5, there's this pin. So, so if e takes, which is my best move, you have queen takes on f5. Rook d3, queen takes on h3 or anything. The queen is forking with support of the rook. So I can't save both pawns. And that would have been bad. If any newer players are seeing this, the reason there was some dancing is because this bishop can check. Well, maybe there was. It's been a month. Maybe there wasn't dancing, but a lot of ideas that might have seemed legitimate are not. After this king goes to a dark square, because there are ways my pieces can uncover themselves. Forget which line that was, but that's important. Many different ways to um, restrict enemy ideas. Again, I tend to think I'm better than I actually am when I have the advantage. I do evaluate my advantage or disadvantage correctly, but the extent of it, I don't always. I just know who has the advantage, but I need to get better at sensing, especially when there are different pieces on the board, um, how drastic the advantage is. Good decisions with that pawn push sequence. I would be one move fast, and I saw all this. Yep. Now, where I erred, well, there, but it's not a problem. That's where I erred because I'm thinking, okay, I have your central pawn now. It's over. But what I didn't see is this draw. I was looking at just any check on this side, which is what happened. But here would force me into a draw by repetition because my only move is there. Fortunately, the opponent made the moves I thought would happen, and I was able to win very comfortably. Now I'm feeling really good because I know I've already played the two highest rated, maybe three highest rated, and I would need either a draw or a win here to win the entire tournament. And it was going my way. I did experiment with uh, a line which involved me relinquishing my castling rights. I knew it wasn't the best, but I knew it was fine. And at this level, I felt like it would be very difficult to attack. And it turned out to be. If I would have made, one or two better choices, I would have won this game easily. But I did get to see some things that could be very valuable in terms of learning and king safety. Let's check it out. Gambits concern me a little bit. You never know what to expect with, and this player was 13, 14. He's much higher now, but let's say he's about a 1400 player. But a lot of them have had training at the club, which means great instruction. Their opening understanding is decent, and if nothing else, they will have some gambit plans. And I haven't studied much of those, so I have to really think. Now that's where I mentioned not the best move, not the best move at all. I of course can't take because of that opening up, double pressure. I only have my queen to defend. And as soon as that move was made, I did see this. I didn't realize how annoying it was going to be until it was made, but I did see it. And I saw the move that I figured the engine would suggest. I'm like, let's do it. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's make him prove that he can attack me. And he did attack fine. Now, of course, it looks scary because right now, let's say, I mean, that for example, I'm trapped. I'd have to give away my queen. I don't want to do that. So the best move, I would assume, is it not the best move? Yeah, barely though. I figured it would be by quite a bit. Is to block the bishop, but more importantly, giving me space for my king to hide, and that was my plan, which I did. And when we try to execute an idea like this, usually we do have to accept if we make one bad move when we're dancing our king around with a lot of material on the board. If we make one bad move, it could be fatal when our king's in the middle of the board. I didn't understand this, and of course, it was not a good move. But at my level, I mean, it's not a terrible idea to make me prove I can defend. Okay. And now just going back to principles, I'm thinking too much about just getting my pieces active, my rooks connected. That's what castling is for mainly. But um, if we're going to break general principles, we have to understand, what they're there for. Castling is to get our king safe and our rooks connected. Since I didn't castle, I need to manually do that. Not a good move. What's it wanting me to do? Bishop c5 would have been better. Because if bishop c5, now that's not so good. Huh. But now that's better because h5. Yeah, I looked at that before I made that knight h6, and I figured that would be bad. Which again, their mistakes are what I'm expecting. So for anyone that said, "Oh, chess is easy," no, a good player, when me and my peers are making these types of mistakes that I'm expecting again, a good player knows how to exploit them, and they will punish us severely. Okay, and here now, what I should have been saying to myself is, that's just too much material. Too much. And my king is when I make a move like I did and a decision like I did with my king safety, it's not going to be super comfortable anyway. So take the rook, but I figured, now I have no pawns in front of my king, so I'm completely exposed. And it's a decision where, going back to the example with good players, just have to realize that making the best moves live over the board, just like in any sport, um, versus understanding a concept or watching a grandmaster do it live, it's very different. It's much harder to do it live when it matters and see it versus when Stockfish shows, oh yeah, I should have done that. And because I'm thinking, okay, the knight is free as well because Then I can take the rook back and it'll be totally fine. And I felt like, these pieces would be jumbled up enough to where I would get one, probably the bishop, and two pieces are usually not enough to kill me. And I also believed my knight would be able to jump in and block some valuable squares the rook might want to go to after it's shifted around. But I didn't look deep enough at how these pawns could assist in the mate, which was my mistake mainly. I mean, the mistake was the decision not to take the rook, but the cause of that was I really underestimated how the pawns could help the other pieces surround my king or prevent my king from escaping. I was looking at how the rook could come in, how my knight, how my bishop could stop the rook from doing any damage, which of whether it be the bishop or the rook I was going to get, and then I was thinking, how can I begin attacking myself? But I didn't consider when I would be chased around that these pawns would aid. And I got punished for it. Very sad. Very sad. Yeah. And there's the mate. Yeah. 3 out of 5. Not a bad result. Again, I started playing online during COVID. I've played seriously at the club over the board for maybe 2 years now. But I was dealing blackjack overnight, Uber drove overnight. So not until pretty recently am I really serious about my improvement and back on my sleep schedule and training program. A few takeaways, and then where I think I'm at, and kind of how I view the climb from beginner to intermediate, and then where I'm getting into the more advanced ranks. So takeaways: time is important, but we shouldn't necessarily look at every move with the same significance. It's very, very crucial to recognize certain moments of the game and spend extra time to at least blunder check during those moves. Long-term strategizing is an important difference between intermediates and stronger players. Like a lot of these, they're decided by, tactical misses or good tactical execution. But in terms of long-term strategizing, as you can just notice me talking about my games, which I haven't looked at them in about a month, so cut me some slack. But it's kind of, I'm here, then I'm there, then the opponent did something and it changed the trajectory. At the top level, it's not so back and forth because they have a better long-term strategy primarily. Whereas I would describe my level of play, even the good players, as reactionarily aggressive. We're reacting. I mean, we do have plans. We're trying things. We're pushing. We know some basics, but our long-term strategy is not that good. As far as how I view um, chess at the level I'm at, which is around 1500 USCF, and for anyone getting into chess that wants to see how strong they could get, even as an adult, uh, what you might expect. And for me, the biggest difference I'm finding in my progress is I am making a lot of progress. I'm getting a lot better. I am 1449 now after my last tournament, which was 2 weekends ago. 3 rounds, I was 2 of 3, and I'm doing well in the weekly night. So I'm probably in the high 1400s right now. A good event will put me well over 1500 if I do well this weekend. But I'm finding against stronger players, I used to just lose, fairly badly. It wouldn't look that bad, but someone who knows chess or a grandmaster would look and say, yeah, Dayton's losing. It's pretty clear from an early stage. And then, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I was really, really fighting good and was almost always, you know, somewhat close. They had to earn it. But what has surprised me recently is as I continue to improve, and much of my competition has played their entire life, so they're not, they've already had their big um, breakthroughs and overcome their plateaus. I'm actually outplaying a lot of even 1600s and 1700s, but they are much, much more slippery in the end game. They find a way to draw, or I miss something because they complicated an end game where I was winning and they turn around and checkmate. Or if they are winning, they almost always convert. And I did not expect that. I expected as I got to stronger players, toward 1800, their middle game would be a lot better. But what I'm finding is they just play a complete game a little bit better and they're more consistent. And that should be motivational to anyone, wants to try to pick up chess. It's not necessarily until you get to the very high levels that you have to have an insane knowledge of the game or know every theory. It's important to play and have a little bit of guidance from top players who know what they're doing for our training programs. Understand our strengths and weaknesses and how our mind works, and then just really get consistent. That's been the biggest difference as I progress, and the biggest surprise is not the overall skill or they do something like, man, how they see that. It's players are just a little bit more consistent. And I feel that is something that will come with time and focus. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what you liked or didn't. And hopefully you had some takeaways that could help your chess game.